The Iran war is falling apart for President Trump, at least phase one of this war, which was the aerial campaign and the so-called easy solution without boots on the ground. So this has completely fallen apart for the Trump administration. They've carried out aerial campaigns, knocking out thousands and thousands of targets, including schools, parks, cafes, residential complexes, and nothing has moved the Iranian leaders to decide to give up and to surrender to the U.S. military power. So we are concluding phase one of this conflict, and you can see now that President Trump is in full panic mode. He put out this Truth Social post about NATO, and I'll just read you this post quickly and move on to another few posts of those MAGA supporters who are still holding on hope that President Trump can pull a rabbit out of a hat. So here's the post on Truth Social, and it has more than 4,000 replies, so I'm not even going to try to delve into that. And here we go. The United States has been informed by most of our NATO allies that they don't want to get involved with our military operation against the terrorist regime of Iran in the Middle East. This despite the fact that almost every country strongly agreed with what we are doing, and that Iran cannot in any way, shape, or form be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. I'm not surprised by their action, however, because I always considered NATO, where we spend hundreds of billions of dollars per year protecting these same countries, to be a one-way street. We will protect them, but they will do nothing for us, in particular in a time of need. Fortunately, we have decimated Iran's military. Their navy is gone, their air force is gone, their anti-aircraft and radar is gone, and perhaps more importantly, their leaders at virtually every level are gone, never to threaten us, our Middle East allies, or the world again. Because of the fact that we have had such military success, we no longer need or desire the NATO countries' assistance. We never did. Likewise, Japan, Australia, or South Korea. In fact, speaking as President of the United States of America, by far the most powerful country anywhere in the world, we do not need the help of anyone. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump. So here in this post, President Trump lambasts virtually all NATO countries, lambasts Japan, Australia, and South Korea. So he's saying that these are basically, moochers who simply extend their hand to receive their share, but never are willing to lift a finger for the United States who have helped them. And if you go into the history of NATO, you can see that NATO was basically the US, the UK, and thirdly, remotely, France. And they were the sheep herders to all these countries who either were their enemies during World War II or were previously Soviet satellite countries. So the United States provided a defensive security umbrella for these countries, and then with the attacks on Yugoslavia became a offensive organization, and then we had the attacks on Serbia, we had the attacks on Iraq, we had the attacks on Libya, and NATO stopped being a defensive alliance, and then they began to try to export NATO to the Pacific, to create kind of to encircle countries which they wanted to control. So that was Russia, that was China, that was North Korea, and this alliance was based basically on the wealth of the United States to maintain it, to equip it, to train it. And many of these countries didn't want to see war again. They just wanted to protect their own homeland from any future attacks. So you can see the U.S. was trying to pull these NATO countries in a direction they didn't want to go. And so we are seeing a definite split between the United States and NATO. And we're even starting to see that in the Pacific, where NATO was supposed to expand to Japan, Australia, South Korea. I'm not too sure why President Trump is not mentioning the Philippines. Did he invite the Philippines? That's another big partner. What about Taiwan? This is the moment for Taiwan to shine in the sun as those powerful countries that will flex their muscle. So anyway, seems like President Trump missed this opportunity to allow Taiwan to, to become a part of the big boys. And so not too sure why he didn't mention Taiwan or the Philippines. What about New Zealand? So anyway, you can see that this alliance that Trump was trying to put together hastily after things went south in phase 1 of this Iran war, and this alliance is not going to materialize. He went into a rant, and this post is the 2 a.m. rant where he could no longer keep all this anger to himself. He had to upload all this information to the internet for everyone to read. And so I don't know if this is starting to show the cracks in NATO, but the United States, in order to maintain its planetary hegemony, needs these NATO countries to go along with all these wars, and many of them are struggling financially, economically. They're struggling in many ways. So they are trying to fix problems in their own country and not try to go off and fix someone else's problem. And if we go down, we get all kinds of mega posts about this, that, and the other. And the mega base now that is supporting President Trump has gone full world police. And here we have a message from clandestine. Iran is proving how NATO provides little to no benefit to the U.S. Not only does the U.S. need any help from NATO, they aren't willing to help anyways. NATO gives Europe security assurances via our military without paying their share. We, the U.S. taxpayer, essentially pay for the defense of Europe, and we receive nothing in return. We don't need NATO, but they desperately need us. So this is the mega wing that is sticking with President Trump. Now let's go to the mega wing that has bolted. And we have up here at the in part A, the Trump allies or mega figures who have bolted. We of course have Tucker Carlson, and he reported that he's being investigated by the U.S. government for basically betraying his country and supporting a foreign entity. They're trying to prove that he received some money from Iran, that he's a foreign agent, and so that they can shut down his media. This is probably the most vocal individual, Tucker Carlson, who supported President Trump and is now going in the opposite direction. We have Steve Bannon, another very vocal supporter of President Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she accompanied President Trump in his rallies and did everything to get him elected. Rand Paul, a real fiscal conservative. Thomas Massey, another conservative. Megyn Kelly, questioning the war and its goals. Matt Walsh. Joe Kent just resigned. So here's a report on Joe Kent. This comes from CNBC. And in the article, they go right to the jugular, saying that he's a promoter of conspiracy theories. So there's Joe Kent, and they show him kind of consternated, being defensive, and in a panic. So that's from CNBC. Here is Joe Kent's X account. After much reflection, I have decided to resign from my position as director of National Counterterrorism Center, effective today. Wow, that has to pay big bucks. So he's leaving, trying to send a message, and here is his letter. I leave all the links below in the description. So anyway, I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from this lobby you can see here, this lobby, and the powerful American lobby, which is, basically funded by this country, which is funded by the United States. So incredible how this money just kind of circulates around to push policies decided behind closed doors and by unelected officials. So anyway, so here in the Post we get this letter. I'm not going to go too deep into that. And so we also have Ann Coulter. And Ann Coulter, I was really surprised because she really backed President Trump on just about everything, and she was, walking parallel lines with President Trump, and then suddenly, she's going in the other direction. And here she explains why this war is a disaster. I'll play a few seconds of this video. Hopefully we won't get hit by an ad or anything while it plays. I'm going to raise the volume here a little bit.
Waging pointless wars around the world and being the world's policeman. How many times do we have to vote on this? And, Trump was attacked for the things he said in 2016. Remember, he said, Jeb's father lied us into war, and the Wall Street Journal and New York Post assured us that was going to kill him in South Carolina, biggest military state in the country, and that was in the South Carolina primary, and next day primaries hold. Who wins? Huge majority, Donald Trump. We have voted on this over and over and over again. So now we've already had how many? 7 Americans die, not to mention 166 school children in our name for a war that does not make one American safer.
So that's Ann Coulter. I think she is very, she says a lot in very few words, and she summarizes up much of the MAGA feeling. I think now you can safely say that it is the majority, and we have others. Candace Owens, a huge following. Matt Gaetz, who was tricked into leaving the U.S. House of Representatives for a phantom position that would no longer be offered to him once he left the House of Representatives. So he is, now is in social media, and it says this summary: warned that an Iran war would betray America first. And anyway, but I think in general the MAGA feel that this is a betrayal of everything that was promised in the campaign, just this ridiculous war that really has no meaning at all. Iran was not close to a nuclear weapon. In fact, they were prohibited from having a nuclear weapon. And then the European leaders, you already know what President Trump said about NATO. So I'm not too sure how much against this war is Viktor Orban. Giorgia Meloni definitely doesn't want Italian soldiers in war. Of course, even the most popular war of recent memory, the Second Gulf War, the Italians provided a military hospital on a ship. So, they're not really into this war thing, and we know how it fared for them during World War II, and they're not interested in repeating that experience, I think. So, Nigel Farage, he was initially very supportive, and now he's starting to realize that this is a bridge to nowhere, and he's trying to backtrack. The Reform UK is a party that is trying to establish itself as the new front runner, and so they are they took this strong position to show that they were all about flexing our military muscle, and then realizing that this war is hopeless and will lead to nothing good for the UK, and sensing that this would do incredible damage to his political party, he's giving an about face. AfD from Germany said that Trump violated his promise not to intervene abroad. Marine Le Pen, another conservative. I mean, this is isolating President Trump from all the people who really want to back him and to see him become successful. So this is driving a wedge, all what it seems, because of his friendship with Benjamin Netanyahu, of the leader in Israel, and this war, which has already originated a very clear war crime, bombing a school where 160 children were killed. So this is just going the opposite direction. So where are we? We're finishing phase one. Phase one is the aerial campaign. This hasn't changed the regime. This hasn't changed Iran's attitude on handing over their nuclear material. In fact, the Trump administration had achieved in negotiations what Iran previously said they would never agree to. So they were getting to a point where they were actually getting beyond the JCPOA of President Obama, but they also, I think, offered all these things because they knew with the military buildup in the area that President Trump had no intention of reaching a negotiated agreement. He had already, had already been involved in these negotiations previously when they were attacked by Israel. They knew what was coming. They knew this was coming. They had prepared for it, and they did their best to stave it off. But in the end, President Trump was too convinced by the easy victory in Venezuela and feeling this war powers firmly in his grasp, went ahead and made this move to begin this war. So phase one is ended. Now phase two. What is phase two? Phase two will be escalation. Huge escalation. they're going to start bombing any building, making Iran look like Gaza, and we will get boots on the ground to some extent. And so, because President Trump doesn't have an off button, he doesn't have a reverse button, he's surrounded by an echo chamber. Everyone is supporting his ideas. And so, this is going to escalate. And will President Trump be supported by some world power? I don't see that happening, at least in the short term. When we get to oil at 250 or 300 or even $500 a barrel, you may see countries willing to do anything to try to unblock the Hormuz Strait. But for the moment, they are steering clear of this conflict, and they do not want to get embroiled. And of course, President Trump said this would be an easy task. Just keep the strait open. Okay, you can't go into this area and try to keep the strait open without actually entering into the war. And so President Trump completely underestimated the capabilities of Iran. He's starting to pay for the price for that. He's panicking. He's looking for help. And in the end, he's going to have to shoulder all the blame and all the military burden for what comes next. And as Julius Caesar once said, once the die is cast, then, basically the following events are completely out of our control. So President Trump had to think about strategy, not about tactics. He was all focused about the aerial power, about the aircraft carriers, about the Tomahawk missiles, about the air defense. And as we know, the air defense supply in the Gulf countries and Israel is starting to run low. So once those air defenses run out, then Iran will be escalating. So it'll be, escalate, escalate, escalate. And so when is this going to stop? This will stop possibly with either with a total destruction of Iran through escalation and destruction, or it will end by the U.S. accepting the conditions of Iran which they have put forth, and I will cover that in another video. So for the moment, you can see for Trump supporters, it's abandoned ship. And this concludes phase one, as President Trump is unable to unblock the Strait of Hormuz and is now faced with either escalation or finding a quick way out of this conflict. And as I say, I don't see President Trump accepting defeat. I don't see him accepting any of the conditions that the Iranians are making. This would make him look like a fool, basically would end his presidency, and he's not ready to do that yet. So, and with that, I will conclude this video and leave the links below. If you want to comment on the video, please do so. I'd appreciate it. And if you want to like and subscribe, that supports this channel. So again, this is the Rowell Report. Thank you for joining me today. Have a good day. Bye-bye.